Today, I want to talk about sequencing. An album sequence is probably the most important aspect of conveying the story that I'm trying to tell. There are instances where I may not have a full storyline, it may be more of a compilation. Like in my past, when I made mixtapes, it was just what songs do I feel like I want heard right now, and that's it. But when it came to albums, it was always a matter of how can I best convey this message? How can I best tell this story? For my most recent album, Who Else But Me, I knew sequencing would be extremely important, mainly because it's a 30 track album. In the streaming era, it's already difficult enough to capture new fans with an album, let alone an album that's 3 times the length of a traditional album. So I knew when I went in to build the track list and come up with the best sequence for this album that it was going to take a lot of work. I went through at least 2 other iterations before I landed on the final one that is present on the album today. I want to explain why I made the decisions I made with the album and the sequencing that I chose for it. And the first is Bleeding Seeds. I knew the album was going to start with Bleeding Seeds. I knew that I wanted something emotional, something strong, something vulnerable for an album that is essentially, re-narrating my life from age 13 to present. Following track 1, Bleeding Seeds, I wanted to build a small little story arc of the early stages of life. And that includes, 13 going on 30, into Homebody, and so forth. I wanted those songs to really talk about the youthful emotion to things. 13 going on 30 being a very clear reference to the movie, but also I started making music at 13. I'm 30 now, releasing this album. What has changed? Where's my mindset at? How much have I achieved? How much haven't I achieved? I wanted to kind of set the stakes. Like, here's the intro with Bleeding Seeds where things get dark immediately. And then the first portion of the album falls into the category of here's my youth, here's me, tearing down some of those walls so I can be a little bit more emotional as the album progresses. After that, I started picking things up a little bit with Time Will Tell and Home Alone, Intuition, songs that were, a little bit more melodic. The BPM increased a little bit, the tempo, and songs that kind of, even though there is a dark undertone and an emotional undertone for these songs, you still kind of feel that things are on the rise, right? Like, I would say the album starts, down here, and then it slowly makes its way up and then plateaus a little bit, comes down, and it's motion. As I'm telling this story, I'm trying to tell it with, meaningful ups, meaningful downs. I didn't want it to feel, fictional. I didn't want it to be, arbitrary storytelling where it's just the opening, middle, and end, and everything is just on a constant up, and then the album ends on an extremely high note, because that's not realistic. Not to my actual life anyway. I wanted it to be reflective of life's genuine up and downs. Where I'm standing at now, it is higher than I was, but it's not as high as I would like to be. So I wanted to really set the stage for, let's open things at a very, a very, very low point and bring them up. Let's let people hear the potential, right? The growth, the coming to terms with a lot of these things. But let's not do it too much to where it starts to feel ingenuine. I wanted things to move smoothly through these transitional parts. It's a 30 track album, so I didn't want everything to just be, building and building and building and building and building to the point where it couldn't be built anymore. I wanted things to kind of take their time, build naturally. If it's a genuine up, it's a genuine up. If it's a genuine down, it's a genuine down. And it kind of, like I said, shaped that journey through this story. I end the first half of the album, the first 15 tracks, going into songs that are more, grateful, songs that are more hopeful. Um, I would even say reflective. I think that section of the album starts with Better Day, Better Day, starts with Better With You, and then ends with a song for my family. Better With You is a story between me and my younger self. It sounds like a love song or a breakup song, but it's really a message to my younger self where I'm saying, I'll be fine, but life is better with you. Life is better with that youthful side. Life is better with that inner child. And bearing him away is somewhat the catalyst for a lot of the negative that began to happen afterwards. And things follow and progress through that portion of the album. And like I said, it concludes with a song for my family where now I'm speaking to my family about these thoughts and about my personal feelings towards them and the things that we've, experienced together in life. Some of it positive, some of it negative, some of it what attributed to a lot of these feelings that are discussed on this album and more. But I felt like the first half of the album starting really dark and then getting to a point that's hopeful and grateful and reflective, but still not quite a point of true positivity and happiness. I felt like it was a good point to, kind of pivot the album and swing into the second half with songs 16 through 30. Part two of the album, because the album originally was separated into disc 1 and disc 2, things open with From the Garden. And From the Garden carries a theme of nature and duality that has been present in a lot of my albums prior. But I felt like with this one, especially with the first half of the album starting with Bleeding Seeds and the second half of the album starting with From the Garden, I felt it was a meaningful approach. In my mind, part one ends on a somewhat positive note, but a little more somber. So with From the Garden picking things up, it's really leaning into the thoughts and emotions of growth and spiritual fertility and being able to see the future beginning to take shape. From the Garden is the first of a 3-track run where it goes From the Garden, Fall from the Nest, Ivory Crow. And those songs tell a story throughout, not necessarily an interconnected narrative, but in terms of themes. With From the Garden establishing, hey, I'm in this beautiful garden. I've planted these seeds. I have to tend to them if I want them to grow. And then Fall from the Nest being, I am tending to the nest that I was born into, but there's a yearning for leaving the nest, but at what cost, right? Are you truly ready to leave the nest and know that things may not be okay in your absence? But you have to leave the nest in order for your garden to grow the way it needs to. You have to go out and, tend to that garden that you are building. And your garden and your nest are not in the same place. And then Ivory Crow finishing off that 3-track run where now that bird that left the nest runs into the Ivory Crow. And the Ivory Crow is a sign of, spiritual guidance, hope. It's that one little interaction that kind of renews the faith in, hey, the thing that I want to achieve and the place where I want to achieve it are great. And this one interaction is somewhat the catalyst that reignites the faith in that. So those three tell a story of, growth, but also the faltering that happens when there is someone who is attempting to be everything he can be for the people around him at the expense of himself, but while trying not to be a burden, while also trying to tend to the garden he is creating and spread his wings and venture out. So I felt like that 3-track run told a very nice, small thematic story within the overall album. Obviously, all of the songs on the album lean into one another and tell a shared narrative throughout my life. but there are certain little bubbles where these two songs or these three songs really share a overarching theme within the overall narrative. Following those, the theme shifts into responsibility, and that is songs like My Inner Child, Third Parent, Room for Me, Gone Too Soon, songs like that, where I'm really reevaluating and analyzing my role in life, and not just my role in my personal life, like my family and friends and things like that, but my role artistically, my role socially, communally, things like that. And I felt like that was a meaningful transition from here are these songs where I'm discussing, faith and branching out and stepping out from the nest and nurturing my garden. And then I go into these songs about responsibility. And I felt like it kind of put things on a scale, put things on a balance, where here's the hope of these things that I would love to do and that I'm trying to do. And here's the responsibility that I feel is weighing me down, thus affecting the things that I discussed in the songs prior. Following those is when I get into songs like Slipping, The One That Got Away, Dark Side of the Mic, where we really begin to see that life is not linear. I discussed earlier how I wanted the narrative to make sense, and I didn't want it to just be a constant up. This portion of the album is where things take a negative swing and things come back down a bit, but the way that I did it was a bit more, how would I word? I like to call it lyrical dissonance. I'm sure there's a proper term for it, but it's where I have a song that's upbeat and happy, although the topic of the song is darker or more negative or sad or what have you. And Slipping begins with me feeling like I'm slipping away, like my mental health is slipping away, the real version of me is slipping away. All these songs prior, I've been discussing trying to find my inner child, trying to nurture it, trying to recapture those parts of me, reflecting on my past, just to get to the end of the album and begin to slip, because life happens. And sometimes we can be on that, consistent path and then, 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of mentality. It's just when you hit those moments of life where you have one negative thing happen, then it feels like everything begins to compound and more negatives continue. So we follow Slipping with The One That Got Away, where I'm discussing, I have not loved anybody in a long time. I have not been interested in dating anyone in a long time. In that, obviously the song is about the relationship side of life, but there are also moments of it where I tie it into, again, that inner child of the one that got away, right? This is not just the woman that got away. This is the life that got away. This is the one that got away. In these moments, as I'm going through these feelings and these emotions, and I'm writing these songs, it began to feel like I let this life slip away. I let this person that I feel like I would love for the rest of my life slip away. So everything began to compound from that point. And from there, we go into Dark Side of the Mic, which does not follow the emotional relationship side of things. It's where I became jaded. I started discussing the dark side of the life that I've been seeking. I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be, a star. I wanted people to love my music and want to, discuss it with me and build a career off of this. But there's a dark side to that as a child I wasn't aware of. And what have we been discussing for the entire album? My inner child. So there's the dark side of pursuing these goals that would hurt my inner child extremely. And if I've been doing what I'm supposed to have been doing, I should be protecting my inner child as much as I can. And Dark Side of the Mic follows that up. And that is where the end of that section of the album really begins to help everything take shape for the ending. For the final section of the album, things start with Pop's Crib. Earlier in the album, I discuss my song Home Alone, where I've been feeling very reclusive. It's just been me recording these songs, working on this album, working on my books, trying to build a life for myself. I feel like I have no support. I feel like I have no team of people that help me with things. Everybody, has their own things going. Life is lifing, essentially. Pop's Crib shines a light on that and shows I may feel alone. I may do a lot alone, but there is another place that I am comfortable, even amongst all the uncomfortability of losing my inner child and trying to recapture it, and the things that I discuss from deep-seated emotions and traumatic events, all of that stuff. There's still another positive place that I can consider being at. It was a moment where I've written every song with my grandfather's pen. I started using it after he passed away, and while I was at Pop's Crib, that pen broke while I was finishing writing the song. And I felt like this is a moment of symbolism for me. This is a really big moment. This pen that I've held on to for more than a decade, that I've written so many songs with, I've been holding on to it. I've been close-fisted with it, and I feel like I had to use it. And it felt like it was connecting me to my grandfather still, rest his soul. Being vulnerable in that space and being comfortable being vulnerable in that space felt like a great antithesis to what Dark Side of the Mic was. And as that transitions into Who Made Who, the thought of, well, now that I'm reflecting, now that I've done the work to try and save my inner child, did I make the music, or did the music make me? Is Cameron London responsible for creating all this music and creating all this art? Or is the art responsible for making me who I am? And obviously it's an answer that doesn't have, it's a question that doesn't have an easy answer. But I felt it was one that at the end of an album titled Who Else But Me, it felt appropriate at the end. It didn't feel like a question that needed to be asked at the beginning. That felt like a question that needed to be asked after I've already done a bunch of introspection. Started this album discussing dark feelings and dark emotions and sadness and loneliness and loss. And now I've went through all of that, and now I'm at the end and I'm like, who am I for real? Like who is this person that I've been trying to establish, that I've been trying to find? And that, leading into songs like Shades of 95 and the title track, Who Else But Me, it all felt like it blended together very well, because I go from Who Else But Me into Shades of 95, which takes everything back to the very beginning, from middle school, even before I started pursuing music, where I just take a trip down memory lane to really find out who I am. Like who made who? Going into Shades of 95, it's like, let me recollect myself. Let me think about all the examples in my lifetime that I've been making music. It really is a balance of the music made me who I am, and I made the music because of the life that I lived. And it was never a one or the other. It was a both, which again leads back into my mention of the theme of duality that's ever present in the majority of my projects. To wrap the entire album up, having a song titled From Me to You, with the album being Who Else But Me, this is From Me to You, where it finally is that letter of apology, of guilt, of loss, all these different emotions of growth, of hopefulness, where I finally write that letter to my younger self, to my teenage self, to my young adult self, to myself now at 30, and having that discussion amongst all these different versions of myself, like, man, I'm sorry I let you down, but then also being able to look at it and say, but I did the best I could do. And I'm where I need to be in this exact moment. And having my family be present on the last track of the album, it really it really brought everything together. And I know it started to get into some of the background of songs, but when I discuss my sequencing for this album in particular, it was not about the sound of the music as a whole. It was about the story and the feelings and the narrative that I wanted to convey with that. There are other albums where I may discuss in the future how I sequence those to make them sound, more like a hit. But this album was a love letter to self. When it comes to sequencing this album, it was important to me to set the stage to tell a story that mirrored my real life, where things start really negative and they seem like they're going up, but they come back down, but they're not as low as they used to be. And I feel like having an honest approach to that, rather than trying to make something formulaic that would do well on the charts or sell well online or anything like that. I felt like for this album specifically, those considerations did not need to come into play as much as the feelings that I was trying to convey. I would love for the album to be a hit. I feel like it's my greatest body of work so far. But more importantly, I wanted people to be able to hear my stories and be able to relate to them in a way that felt genuine.